Hello and welcome. My name is Emily Prieto, and I'm the co-host of the Seeds of Tao podcast alongside my husband, Joshua Prieto. We're also the co-owners of the Seeds of Tao education platform and incubator for regenerative entrepreneurs. If you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast for impact entrepreneurs creating regenerative enterprises. We often get asked what exactly a regenerative enterprise or impact entrepreneur is. So if you're wondering, a regenerative enterprise builds triple bottom line profits through the practice of ethics and principles that lead to a more inclusive, fair, and balanced economy. Impact entrepreneurs, or regenpreneurs, as we sometimes like to call them, are those willing and able to take on the financial and personal risks of starting and building regenerative enterprises. You'll get to know exactly what all that means as you join us for this and future episodes, but know that we welcome everyone to join us as we work to build regenerative economies together. That's exactly why we are here doing what we do at Seeds of Tao. Our mission is to help establish regenerative economies in every bioregion by serving individual regenpreneurs like yourself. In this podcast, you'll hear the startup stories in all their glory from impact entrepreneurs all over the globe. You'll learn and grow the skills of building a regenerative enterprise from your peers, mentors, and leaders. Finally, we'll get to know each other as you engage in the podcast and join the wonderful Regenerative Business Economies Network, aka RegenBen, an open community where peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenpreneurs come together to build and the regenerative economies of the future. Join us every month for a wonderful episode as we collectively move beyond sustainability and into our regenerative future. It all starts now.
Jenny, it's good to have you today. It's my morning. It's your afternoon. You're in the UK, from what I understand, right?
Yeah, and Stroud in the UK.
Stroud in the UK, and we get to talk on different sides of the world. But we're honestly we have similar backgrounds in the marketing and branding world, and we want to use that as a strong skill set to help do good in the world, to simplify it as much as I possibly can. Jenny, how are you this morning, first off? And then what got you up this morning? Like what gets you excited to do what you do?
I'm very well this morning. I mean, it's 3:00 in the afternoon for me, and I've had back-to-back meetings all day. So my back-to-back meetings got me up this morning, but they're really interesting. They're 2 new clients working in really interesting spaces that actually contribute to the world. So one is a local company trying to promote the sustainable pioneering businesses in this area, which is really important to do to help give them a leg up. And another one is a company who's worked in conflict negotiation and wants to use those skills to help unpick preconceptions or propaganda of different identities out in the world, which is incredibly exciting. They've just done a bit of work around the Russia-Ukraine war. So that was exciting. So I guess what gets me out of bed in the morning are the sort of a huge range of projects out there, brands out there, people out there, organizations out there that are doing good in the world, trying to contribute to the world, trying to leave the world better than they found it. And I'm a real people person, so getting to talk to them and getting to understand them, because branding it's a lot about values and purpose and mission. And those are real people qualities, and I love unpicking that with people and finding out what drives them and what gives them hope in the present moment where we are fed a hell of a lot of doom and gloom, and also just listening to their ideas about how we can change things and how things could be. I really love that.
You're having these really intimate conversations. How has it driven the way that you do your work? Like how has it helped your purpose in your work? I guess that's the first part of the question. And then after that, how has that purpose changed?
So I think to answer this, I might go back to my 20s when I cut my teeth in branding at the big agencies, the big global agencies in London, on the big global brands of the world. And working on those brands was always incredibly glamorous. I've always had alcohol brands in my life. I've had Coca-Cola as a client for many years. P&G, Unilever, I've got a whole roster of, the big global clients, and it's so glamorous, right? I remember Diageo sending me to Cork to get to know Baileys and going on the Baileys weekend and learning all about how to drink Baileys, and similar things with Johnny Walker in a castle up in Scotland. And it's so glamorous and exciting, especially when you're in your 20s, that you kind of get wrapped up in it. And you do get wrapped up in the stories that you're telling for these brands, the investigating into the people who originally started them, and why they originally started them before they were bought up by the big conglomerates. That's really interesting and powerful. But actually on a day-to-day consumer commercial implementation application point of view, it loses some of its richness. It loses some of the emotion and connection to the purpose. And branding's all about, purpose, values, mission. But when they're kind of these brands that were started by a person with a vision, but then they're swallowed up by big corporations who have investors and shareholders to pay and targets to meet and KPIs, it loses something. And so when I had my children, and I didn't have them both at the same time, when I had my first child 12 years ago, I think this nagging feeling that I'd always had working on the big brands started to get much louder. And I started to look around me. I think it was, I was having like the dark night of the soul. I was waking up to the state of the world. I think it was around the same time that Al Gore had his Inconvenient Truth movie out, which was a significant, pivotal moment for me. And I just started looking at the world and just thinking, well, how am I contributing? How am I? Marketing and branding can be many things, but it's generally used to manipulate people into buying things that they don't need. That's not the only use for marketing, but it's generally what the commercial market is using it for. And that nagging feeling just got louder as I looked at my children and the world that they were inheriting. I started to want to move away from that. And I started studying, thinking, marketing and branding is bad. I will go and become a scientist and save the world. And I went and studied the circular economy. I studied regenerative land management. I studied behavioral change science. I studied impact investing. I studied all sorts of things, trying to figure out where I could be of use. And what I found was, in these really important pioneering areas, there's a hell of a lot of scientists and people that know their stuff, and they all speak a certain language that only each other can understand. So they're in this echo chamber, and they can only understand each other. No one else can even enter into the echo chamber, because language and communication and also the doom and gloom around everything is such a barrier. Whereas, let's plant trees and drink from paper straws is such a much easier silver bullet message to get. So, the majority of society isn't listening to the real important messages. And so actually I found that, okay, this is what I'm good at. I'm good at storytelling. I'm good at helping to translate information so that it will resonate with the people that need to understand it. And so that's how I started working in, I say sustainability very loosely, it's an overused word, but that's how I started there. And then And then every client that I worked with, and it was much smaller scale to start with. I was just consulting, but every client I met with was there was such a difference between them and the clients I was used to in the big corporations, because the people coming to me, so there was a woman that was really interested in biodynamic sustainable wines, and she was obviously a wine lover, but the way she spoke about how these wines were produced and the transformation of the landscape, and how that meant the taste and the quality of the wine, and the headaches in the morning wouldn't be there. And she was so unbelievably passionate about bringing this to the world. It was infectious, and you get wrapped up in it, you get carried away in it. But and that was so different to working on, say, Coca-Cola, because it's got some incredibly clever marketeers on it doing some really incredible things. And yet the passion for the purpose just, I guess, it's not the same. So the more I've worked in this field, the more I come across people who are so enthusiastic, so excited, so full of hope, so, or like true innovators. I realize I'm taking a long time to answer this question, but
no, this is perfect. This is helpful.
But bear with me. So another side to the work that I do is working in the regenerative economy, or businesses in the regenerative movement. They are true innovators in the sense that they are coming up with solutions that solve multiple problems. So traditionally, innovation was, we've invented, I don't know, this helicopter, isn't it amazing? But, it causes several more problems, like pollution and noise and all of these things. Whereas now, in the regenerative space, the principles of a regenerative approach, they want to make sure that whatever is produced is fit for purpose, but also is better for the environment, so it doesn't affect the environment, actually enhances where possible, enhances community, enhances well-being. And so rather than here's a solution for one thing, but we've created 5 more problems, people are, the businesses that I come across in this space are just solving multiple problems. So it's also just how would you talk about that? Just being blown away by just how clever and brilliant these people are. So yeah, there you go. I think I've answered that question now.
That's a pretty awesome answer, I would have to say. And it's something that I think we get a lot of bad rap as marketers. And I almost feel in the regenerative and permaculture, if you've talked with the permaculture crowd as well, there's the business owners almost feel guilty about making money sometimes. About because they want to create these changes, and then I don't want to be Coca-Cola. I don't want to go wine and dine my marketers to create really great messaging for me, and make pretty stuff. And then so the marketer, I think, often gets the bad end of that stick, even if it's someone like you or I who has the intention. And so I want to maybe explore this for a little bit. And I also want to go down more into the detail of the story, right? And so first I want to linger maybe here for just a moment, and then let's see if we can dive more into the story of how you started your agency, and maybe some of the challenges that came, but as you did that, so people can understand what it takes to try to help businesses that are doing regenerative work or even sustainable work, right? And so the question I have, because I'm really curious if how you're going to answer this, because I have a clear answer in my head, but there's a lot of times there's this conception of marketing as the bad guy. And I think there's a couple of authors out there that have shown this and in a different light, like Seth Godin, All Marketers Are Liars. That book is, I love it. I really do. Cause it really, he's a marketer himself and he's like really pointing out things, but he's also like bringing he's helping you to change a mindset. Right. And so there's this thought, and I love that you laughed because I think you understand that as well. So there's this thought that there's a difference between branding, brand marketing, and brand advertising, right? And maybe you've never even run into the two different definitions, but what do you think the differences are between someone that's using brand marketing and someone that's doing brand advertising? Share with the audience, because I think maybe, yeah.
So I have many views on marketing and branding, and one of them is that they just have to come up with new names for everything all of the time. And it's a bit like accounting in the UK. If we make it really, really, really confusing, then they feel they'll have to come and talk to an agency because we've made them feel like they have no clue, and it's this big complicated thing that I couldn't possibly do alone. And so I don't know. That we have too many names for things. There's so much overlap. I try not to get too bogged down in the labels of things. And as a strategist who's insight led, what generally happens is someone will come to me because they've recognized they've got a problem and they think the answer is this. And then I go, okay, so we'll do an immersion, and I'll do stakeholder interviews, and I'll sit down with you and I'll talk about it, and I'll look at your business model, and I'll talk to your customers, your ex-customers, if that's even possible, your target audience. I'll get a real appreciation and a sense for what's going on. And then quite often I come back and go, this is actually the problem, and then map out a way to fix it. And that will include, generally brand strategy, because that's what I do. But it will also, branding is the foundation for everything. Once you've got a good brand strategy in place, marketing naturally comes out of that, marketing strategy and then a marketing plan. And so that's how I tackle it, because I just think there's too much complicated language around everything, and you need real insight to be able to solve anything in the branding or marketing realm. So that's how I think of it.
Yes, thank you. And so everybody would answer that differently, and so that perspective of don't over confuse it, like really get down to the roots and like truly understand what's happening in the business, so that you can create messaging and something that's impactful, that really truly speaks to who they are and who they want to speak to, I think is important. And I think for me, there are so many different terms out there in marketing and in branding and whatever that is. But for me, there is a distinction between someone that is, and you can call it so many different things, but I think a lot of times marketers get a bad rap, and often, I'm not going to market my business in the traditional way, or I'm not going to reach out to a branding agency for help because they don't maybe see, they look at what I would define as brand advertising as like what a brander does. And brand advertising, I look at Coca-Cola, really the big brands that have a lot of budget to spend, that can do these advertising campaigns, right? And they're short-time things, right? They may have overall messaging that they're doing for the long term, but it's usually to play on something that's happening right now, so they can take advantage of someone's the thought space of someone. And that to me is like advertising. And I'm not to say that advertising is wrong in any way, and if used the right way, advertising it needs to be done, and brand advertising can be done very well as well. But brand marketing is what you were talking about. It's about really diving in and getting the message of understanding the strategy of how you speak to people and how you present yourself in an authentic way. And that takes more time. And a lot of times I think bigger business, especially, they're really, they have the money to be able to spend and have the great marketers around them. But they're very short-sighted a lot of times, right? Whereas if we're looking for someone that really wants to create advocacy with their brand and wants to take time, Coca-Cola has done that over time, but a regenerative brand, especially, I think, to be able to create change, often needs that type of help to be able to break out of the noise and all of the different things that are happening, right? So I respect that understanding of, like, we're making things too confusing, and we just need to really dive into truly that understanding, that observing and interacting, if we're going to use a permaculture language around it, observe and interact the company, the design, the systems that are at play, and make sure that you're able to adequately create messaging for that, so that it conveys the right things, right?
Yeah, I guess I like to think of it slightly differently. It's more like, what are you trying to achieve? Because when you're trying to achieve making people buy things they don't need, then that becomes a very different brief to, I would like to make people aware of something, or I would like to reframe something. So I wrote a blog to try. It's almost like an anti-marketing in the exploitative sense blog, and I've a few things on there about reframing. But so for example, where marketing and advertising, brands, marketing and advertising all kind of collide to do good in the world. I think the best example, or my favorite example of that, is the 2012. That can't be right. 2012 Paralympics in London. And up until that point, the Paralympics was seen as a sort of sideshow to the Olympics. It was kind of viewed with pity. Say the stadiums didn't sell out, tickets didn't sell out. Not many people even watched it. I think 14% of UK people watched the Paralympics before the 2012 Paralympics. And so when the 2012 Olympics came to London, which is obviously full of great branding and advertising agencies, they were all tendering to do the project. And I can't remember who won it, but obviously the next project was the Paralympics, and Channel 4 tended to show it and then win it. And that was a really big thing for Channel 4 at that time. They were up and coming, and it was going to be an opportunity for them to make more of a dent in the terrestrial TV space. And so they wanted to throw everything at it. They're quite maverick, Channel 4, and they wanted to make the Paralympics the main event. They wanted to be better than the Olympics, because that's the kind of maverick attitude that Channel 4 had. And they had an amazing creative agency, I think 4 Creative. And that was the brief. The brief was, make the Paralympics the main attraction, make them as big as the Olympics. And so that's what they did. So then they went and did the research, and they found out that people thought of the Paralympics as a sideshow. They thought it was a bit of a pity party. They didn't respect the athletes as being elite athletes in the same way that they did Olympians. And so they wanted to, so 4 Creative decided they needed to reframe Paralympians so that people could really see who these people are. And so when you think, and so they kind of came up with the idea that an Olympian is, the best in class at running, the best in class at rowing, the best in class at all these things. But a Paralympian is not only the best in class at all of those things, but they have had to overcome so much more than that Olympian to get there. And so they were like, well, so they're superhuman. And so that became the proposition for the 2012 Paralympics. And off the back of that, so they almost rebranded Paralympians as superhuman. And then off the back of that became a marketing strategy for how we're going to, who's going to resonate with this proposition that they can come and watch these superhumans. And then from that came the marketing plan, from that came the advertising, and the TV commercial that came out of that is possibly the most powerful TV commercial I have ever seen. I cry at it every single time I watch it. And then the print campaign was equally good. They were, after the Olympics finished, they put billboards all around the stadiums thanking the Olympians for the warm-up and that the real show was coming. But yeah, if you're interested in how branding and marketing and advertising can come together to do good in the world, I would definitely push you towards that case study, because it was just amazing.
Yeah, I have to. I'm trying to remember my time and place, and I do remember the campaigns from that and being inspired by them, but I can't necessarily call them. So I want to revisit that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Because sorry, to talk about the effectiveness of doing that. So the 2012 Paralympics were the first ones ever to sell out. Every stadium sold out. The TV coverage, I can't remember the stats now, but it went from something like 14% to 67% of UK were watching the Paralympics, whereas, it was only 14% in other years. And the other thing about that, sorry, I get so excited about it. The other thing about it is that the Olympians, and I was there at the Paralympics on the javelin finals, and 9 world records were broke one after the other at those javelin finals, because the stadium was so full of people cheering these people on that it kind of changed the way the Paralympians saw themselves. They believed in themselves more, and then they were smashing their records out of the park. And I just think how powerful, how wonderful, what a great skill set we have, and it can be used for good. It can be like these, you can use this stuff for good or for evil. But that is, for me, and there's loads of examples of that, but that's the one that really stuck out for me.
Let's take a moment for a promotional break to tell you about a course Seeds of Tao has just released in its beta form. The entrepreneurs that listen to this podcast want to see change. We want to be the change, and we want to bring that change. We want to change the culture from an extractive and degenerative one into a permanent, regenerative one, a culture that cares for its people, planet, and future. This is the reason why so many entrepreneurs we talk to at Seeds of Tao start regenerative enterprises. They don't do it for the money. They do it because they want to see change. The challenge is that it's hard to build a business, especially a regenerative one, that is the catalyst for change. I often interview and speak with individuals that have managed to build a business and livelihood from their passion. And they often tell me that they wish they could do more, or they feel like their efforts aren't enough. They want to scale their efforts and the efforts of others, but they don't know how. Don't we all feel this way sometimes? We see our neighbors, industry, peers, suppliers, producers falling further into degenerative practices, and we think, I've made the change, why can't they? How can I get them to change? We know it's hard to change, and for some, it's harder than others. We also know that we can't change others, only ourselves. We can, however, pave the way for change and make it easier for the next person to be that change. That path always starts with a story. Seeds of Tao has launched its first online course for regenerative entrepreneurs, and its objective is to help you pave the way to regenerative change through the power of your brand story. You'll learn to naturally grow and scale your business using brand storytelling and other inherent marketing systems that have stood the test of time. As you do this, you'll learn to do it in a way that influences change, not forcing change. No, we should never do that. It never works. Nor should we manipulate, even though it's an unethical way to make things work. Let's be a positive influence through the story and the message that we put out. The course is called The Story Seed, and it's the first of 6 initial courses we're releasing to help regenerative entrepreneurs build the regenerative economies of the future. The first 500 students to enroll in StorySeed will gain lifetime access to this course and the other 5 courses in our initial catalog. To give you an idea of what some of those courses will be, in addition to StorySeed, which covers marketing and messaging, we're building a funding and finance course and a course that helps you navigate the cultural forces and flows that you face as you create systematic and cultural change in your industry. On top of lifetime access to the Pando Academy course catalog, you'll be able to join us for weekly office hours, utilize step-by-step action workbooks, get discounted prices on other offerings, and other amazing benefits. This is a beta offering, which means you're helping us pioneer an education platform and accelerator for regenerative entrepreneurs. If you're an innovator and early adopter building a regenerative enterprise, come pioneer this with us by following the promotional link in the description or show notes and enrolling in StorySeed. Okay, let's get back to the episode.
That really makes me feel good to be a marketer. Those moments, so I was, and maybe this is just a little bit of where am I at right now, just speaking with the regenerative and permaculture movement. Just like, I feel a lot of times like I've done marketing and branding as my career, right? But my side hustle has been regeneration and like just love. My passion, I should say, has been in regeneration. I tried to do an off-grid homestead, didn't know what the heck I was doing, right? But realizing that I could step into my true power, things like that, right? Are like, I can see it, I can sense it in you. Like you really want to help and know that this is a great, powerful thing that you're doing. And you found that for yourself. So now I think this is a good time for us to say, like, give us a little bit more detail of and help us dive into the story of how you started your agency, and why you started it. I know we've touched on it a little bit, but let's give us more of an image in our head, the audience's head, my head, of how that came to be.
So the agency started off the back of my consultancy, where I was working with brands and organizations to better tell their story, to resonate with audiences that they'd identified it they needed to speak with. And I was invited to pitch for a local organic craft beer brewery. And I needed a creative to work with me, a graphic designer, if you like. And where I live in Stroud is unusually creative. There's an incredibly it's an incredibly unique place, Stroud. It's sort of it's not very well known. We're out in the Cotswolds. We're away from the big cities, but it seems to be where a lot of creative people are drawn to. There must be some lovely energy going on in here. Well, so 5 valleys meet here, and it's the only place in the world, apparently. I'm sure somebody on the podcast might be able to correct me, but as far as I know, it's the only place in the world where 5 valleys meet. And so there must be some kind of creative energy there. But anyway, I digress. Yeah. So I had a lot of creative friends, and they introduced me to Adam, who is my business partner, who is a brilliant creative director. And he had the same story. He'd worked in all the big agencies and had just become a bit disillusioned with what was asked of his talent, that he was once having to retouch Kate Moss. And I think if Kate Moss isn't good enough for the world, then we have to retouch Kate Moss, then so we'd both come to the conclusion that we were very talented and we wanted to use our talents for good. And so we pitched for Stroud Brewery, which is our local brewery, together. And we won the project, but we also, in the meantime, worked on lots of little projects together. And we really saw the potential for how our combined talents could just really help businesses that are offering something good for the world or good for people. Or so, I mean, obviously you might question whether or not a brewery making beer is good for the world. And that's a debate I'm happy to have, because there's all sorts of grey area. But that brewery is promoting organic, is running pilot schemes here in the UK to grow organic hops, because they're incredibly difficult to grow in our climate. So if you get hops from the UK, they won't be organic. And if you do want organic hops, you have to ship them in from New Zealand. So Greg, who runs that brewery, is trying to make the beer category in the UK organic, and to do that he's investing his own money in growing the ingredients for the supply chain. So and he does so many amazing things at his brewery. Breweries are very energy heavy, and so he's trying to become as carbon neutral, negative as possible, and all sorts of great social community things that they do. So we came together on that project, and since then we've worked on all sorts of projects. We and it's really interesting because like I said, I going into the more science area of this world, and understanding that scientists speak a very different language that the mainstream audience or their customer segments didn't really understand. That plays a huge role in what we do now. We've just worked with Torafine, who are amazing people that have found a way to make bioplastic a serious contender to synthetic plastic, because bioplastic is traditionally not flexible, not durable. Gas is easy. It's more easy for gas to permeate, so it's not great for food packaging. And so we're still reliant on synthetic plastic, which is obviously oil-based, which is very flexible and very durable. And they found a way to embed graphene into biopolymers, which make them flexible, make them durable, make them, great for food packaging. But interestingly, when they came to us, they had this sort of doom and gloom message about turtles eating plastic bags, and they were here to solve that problem. But they'd also aligned themselves as a bioplastic brand. In a category that has a bad reputation for not being a very good product. And we found was, doing the research and talking to the scientists, understanding them better, was that not only did were they a serious contender to synthetic plastic, but actually their benefits exceeded the benefits of traditional synthetic plastic because of this graphene. Graphene can pass, with the right formula in bioplastic, can pass an electrical current through it, which means that if you've got food packaging, you can run an electric current through to make sure that the packaging is whole, and there's no hole in that packaging where bacteria could get in, or gas could get in and infect the food. It's also really great for counterfeit, which is really important in medicines and alcohol. And then there's a whole load of other benefits. So what we found was they are actually exceeding the benefits of oil-based plastic, but they're wrapping themselves up in the poor reputation of bioplastic. And so we were able to take their scientific language and reposition them as a high performance biopolymer brand, and that completely transformed how they spoke about themselves, what their brand visual brand identity looked like. We aligned them more with high performance brands like Formula One or SpaceX, or to just really bring in that visual language. But then knowing that they're essentially inspired by nature-based solutions, we also looked into nature and thought, well, nature is high performance. It's the most intelligent high performance thing that we have on this planet. And also that if we think about evolution as R&D, there's 4.6 billion years of R&D on this planet. So we tried to, we used images from nature, so macro images of like a bee's eye, which is full of hexagons, or really zooming in on insects or scales on fish or lichen and moss, and to just really show the intricate high performance details of nature and how, and just use that visual language, which is much less worthy than, the traditional leaf and green and blue and all the rest of it. So yeah, I've got lost as to what question I'm answering now. Sorry.
No, it's the story, and it's all a part of the story. I do want to just kind of take us back just a little bit, and also emphasize some of the points that you just made of, and you made early on when we first started talking, of really making this the work of bringing out messaging to be something that you may not be looking at the right perspective, or you may be trapped in your own ego bubble, right? And how do we, if we want to create bigger change, and be, well, not even bigger change, but just be the most effective that we can be, right? Like how being able to move beyond the echo chamber of like how we're talking in our science terminology, in our a lot of times there's permaculture language, there's regenerative language, there's sustainability language, there's all these other languages, but this product can impact everybody, right? So why not be able to talk to in a very strong way, not only the person that it could impact, they would but you can't often get into that mindset or understand that conversation when you haven't stepped out of that echo chamber yourself and try to look at it from a different perspective, or invited someone else that is outside of your little chamber that you've made to come in and help you with that type of work, to be able to talk to someone that maybe you've had a hard time talking with, but would like to, right?
Yeah.
For that impact. So I wanted to emphasize that, but then let's go a little bit back, and because I know there's a dynamic between creative and strategist, and strategist is often a creative. Branding is a creative art,
I'm touchy about that word, right? Because everyone pulls that on the creative, and I'm like, I'm creative.
Yeah. I'm the strategist in our dynamic, because we had a branding agency before. I was the strategist. And I worked with a bunch of creatives, right? And so I'm like, but I'm a creative too, and they would often do the same things. I do know what you're talking about, being touchy in that. And Emily now, she was a creative director in our other branding agency, and I had my business partner was a videographer, award-winning videographer. So he was well known as a creative, making pretty things, right? And so when we teamed up, it seemed like I was like, I'm the strategist, they're the creative. But I want to talk about this dynamic a little bit, and how it helps having a strong creative team, a strategist, someone that can visually pull out things, but someone that also understands the strategy of like the business and can see how to communicate and how it might affect other people's behavior around a certain topic if we present ourselves a certain way. And what that dynamic was when you were trying to find someone, did you already have that understanding? Like, I need to find someone that has these types of understanding so that we can work well together, so that we can create the right pieces. I know there's the understanding of we both have to relate to the work. And that was one of the big things that I didn't relate to in my other branding agency. My friend who I partnered with just wanted to make pretty things, to be honest, right? And he was really good at it. And the creatives can be so awesome in that, but they'll take any work for Coca-Cola, for anybody, right? And they just want to make pretty things and have the budget to be able to do that, right? And so I got lost on that journey. So there's something about that dynamic when you're finding a partner. But also, so if you can take us into that story a little bit of how you kind of found your partner in this work and how you guys work together?
Sure. So yeah, worked in many design agencies, worked with many designers, many creative directors, and yeah, there are different types, and there are people with different values, but also different points of view when it comes to design. But design for me has always meant problem solving. Otherwise, it's just art. It's creativity, it's expression. But design is problem solving as far as I'm concerned. And so I wanted to work with somebody who wanted to solve problems through design and would naturally therefore value a strategic approach based on insights. So yeah, I was really lucky to find Adam, because that can be quite I don't know, I'll get myself into trouble with all my designer friends now, but it can be quite a rare quality. So he really valued that, and he'd been working as a freelance for a while, so was missing that quite often. And so we just naturally worked well together. That's what we found on our first project. And there is a real +1 attitude as well with us, which is also a principle from the regenerative community, which is instead of no buts, it's yes and.
Yes and. I love that.
And we have that naturally with each other. So one of us will have an idea and the other one will build on it, and the other one will build on it, the other one will build on it. And we just produce really great work, really satisfyingly great work for our clients that we're truly proud of. So that's how we found each other, and that's just generally how we work.
Well, and I like how you also started off with one project and it just turned into 2, 3, 4, and then it became a thing, right? And I think that's helpful for other entrepreneurs and other people creating business together. To you don't have to fully commit to making them. I mean, having a partner is like a marriage, and the business partner is like being in a marriage, and so there's that slow and gradual like dating and getting to know each other as but a lot of times in business it's like you're in it and you're doing it together, and it's like you can't escape from each other. It's like you're instantly married after the first date, right? And that can happen.
Yeah, no, we took it very slow. But also I think it helps. We have different qualities. So Adam is a more natural risk taker than I am. I'm a bit more is considered the right word? I don't know. But so we took our time, but we just found that we naturally wanted to work on all of the projects that we had together. And so it just became a no-brainer to start the business. But what I would say to any startups who are listening and who are considering sort of joining forces with somebody is that communication in any relationship, whether it's a marriage, a business partner, a friendship, whatever, communication is the key. You have to be able to communicate well. You have to be able to tell the other person when something's wrong, and they have to be able to listen, and you have to be able to work through it. And if you can't do that, then don't go into business together. And you have to, because you have to be able to just go, that's not working. That's not, it's not on brief. That's not working for me. Or, Adam has to go, that's not going to work. That's not going to translate into design, or I think we should go about this different way. You have to be able to do that and really value the other person's input and listen to it, I would say.
Yeah. Critical. And sometimes it just doesn't gel that way, right? Like you could probably, one person you could do that with really well, and another person not so well, right?
Yeah.
Or even horribly, like don't even talk to that person, right? You guys should not be in the same room. And so, I think it's important to figure that out. And a project, I think, is a good way to do that. And marketing always is a project. Branding is always a project, right? Yeah. And so it's a good way to kind of test each other out is like, how can we work on a project together and do this together? And yeah, I that's one thing that I've noticed just as being a marketer, a brander, and you're working with teams. One team could be flawless and just amazing, and you're so excited about the work that you produced. And then the next team, just even, slight changes to it. Like one team member is doing a different job on it because someone else was brought in to do something else that was similar, and their clash was something, and it ruined the dynamic, or it can really make a difference. And so I think it's like, I had a hard time with my branding agency finding the right team, right? And finding the right people to slowly bring into it. And I think entrepreneurs in general have that, and in the regenerative world, as we're building, how can we more fully get to know each other and learn to communicate in ways that are effective and healthy for everybody involved, right?
Yeah.
So I'm glad you found that.
But there's a great TED talk by Jenny Anderson, and she talks about teams and how you build a great team. And she starts from a point of, tell me what your weaknesses are. Don't tell me what your strengths are necessarily, but really focus on your weaknesses, because when you're building a team, you want to make sure that you don't need to recruit skill sets that you've already got, right? So if you were a company, you wouldn't want, I don't know, 5 accountants, but only 2 people doing, I don't know, in the actual production department. So it's a team should be a whole mishmash of strengths and weaknesses. And when you know someone has a weakness, you should be able to partner them with somebody that has that as a strength, and sort of build a team that way. And I think, again, that's how Adam and I are. Where one has a weakness, the other one has a strength. And so everything's met. And I think that's really important. It's that honesty and that ability to be yourself in a team. So everybody understands what you're really good at and where you're going to need help. And then the team can be supportive. And you don't have to hide that. You don't have to sort of risk getting things wrong and producing work. Yeah. Exactly. Hurting the project, hurting the business, because you've identified that I'm weak here. And so I'm just going to need someone to proofread that because my spelling isn't great, or, I can't think. We'll need someone who's really good with relationship skills because that person's quite shy, that sort of thing. And then you've got a great team, and you've got a team of just people that respect and value each other. That's beautiful.
I'm gonna share that TED Talk, and I want to listen to it myself.
Yeah, I'll send it you.
So let's start going towards getting some key points out of your story and sharing with the audience what you would think is best for what you would hope, I should say, is best for our audience to take away from the work that you've done, the story that you've built over time, and your journey.
Oh, okay. I might start with journey. I think if you are, mind you, I feel like the people who are listening to this podcast will have already made this move. But for those of you that haven't, if you're in a career situation that feels glamorous and feels like it's everything or looks like everything you thought you wanted, but it doesn't feel right. You don't feel fulfilled, but you feel you must stay in because the wage is good and the benefits are good, but you're quite stressed and demoralized. I would encourage you to have the confidence to take a step away from it and into something that really feeds your soul, because I earn a lot less than I used to, but I'm the happiest I've ever been. And the work that I do offers something good not as good as the people that I'm working for. The stuff that they're offering to the world is brilliant, but I'm adding something rather than extracting something. And it's just a much nicer, more happy place to be.
Ooh, I think there's a lot of people that have made that change within regeneration and permaculture. And I also think that there's people here that are listening because they are wanting to take that change, right? It's a hard one. It's risky. It's scary.
It's such a hard one because while you're in the system, it's very hard to see outside of the system, outside of the, but I went to school and then I went to college and then I went to uni and then I was on a graduate scheme and then I did this and I've done that and I pay the mortgage and I've got survivor pension and and I think the system is designed to keep you in it. But when you step out of it and you're exposed to the world that isn't living in that system, it's a lot more simple than we're led to believe. And it's a lot easier than we're led to believe.
Yes. Well, I've been struggling as a startup, I should say, for a lot of time. And a lot of my entrepreneurial career as a branding and marketing career, it's easy to make money where you want, it's easy to find and make money and do what you want to, but there is you kind of just have to accept for where it comes from, right? In a lot of places, right?
Yeah.
And it can be good, it can be bad, it can be everything in between, and many types of gray that you may or may not be comfortable with. But it is mostly the mental of getting over that I have to have it this way. It has to look this way. But really what you want is what I want to feel this way. So I liked how you brought that. The look and the feel is definitely a good part of that. Right. And it doesn't take much. It really just takes small tweaks, and it maybe even a bit, it could be slow and small solutions as the permaculture principle suggests that you take that will help you to get more aligned with that feel, right? Is this really do I feel like I want to feel when I'm doing the work that I'm doing? So I really like how you brought that up. Keep us, I think that's a really great point. Is there anything you want to add to that or any other key points that you want to, from your journey, to share with the audience?
My 12-year-old's just come home, so I'm going to tell him to be a bit quiet. What else would I guess another thing I want is if there are people listening to this who are struggling to resonate with the people they want to talk to connect with, to generate awareness of what they're doing. I'd want them to look to sort of put themselves in the position of the client, because quite often, and this is just purely branding advice, but quite often we get caught up in what we're doing, what we're offering, who we are, and quite often to resonate with people, you need to meet them where they are and find out what about what you're offering is relevant to them, or meets a need or a want or a desire or is a solution to a challenge that they're facing. And there's always a way to reframe things. There's always a way to communicate things differently. There's always a third way. Even when you're led to believe there's only two ways, there's always a third way. And so I would just say, if there's anybody that feels really stuck and really struggling and has got a really great idea or a really great innovation, or just a great offer, then try and think about it from a different perspective. And generally it's the perspective of the person you want to talk to.
That's great advice. And I think we could all use that in this group of entrepreneurs, regenerative entrepreneurs. And at different times too. And we could use that in our personal lives. We could use that in, our business. And so thank you for sharing. All right. Well, how can we stay in touch? How can we follow your journey, and where can we get a hold of you if we need you to handle our next branding campaign? Because I can't get out of my own thoughts right now. Tell me how do we do that?
The best place to stay in touch with me is on the website, which is levelstudio.uk, not co.uk, just .uk. And on there is my blog and also a way to get in touch with us. So that's probably the best way. Or on LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Sounds good. And I think I found you on LinkedIn. No, it's GRC.
GRC. Yeah, GRC.
That's right. The Global Regenerative Collab, which is in a wonderful place as well, which we'll link in show notes as well. So
yeah, I'm a big advocate for that network community. It's just amazing people doing amazing things. And that community got me through lockdown. It's such a powerful community. So yeah, I'm very grateful for them.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Jenny. It's been a wonderful time having you on the podcast. And
thank you.
I hope we can have you on again and share some more knowledge that you have, because you dropped some great tips for us and business opportunity changes and thought changes that we can do. So if there's another opportunity, I would love to have you on the podcast.
Oh, anytime. This has been fun. Thank you.
All right, everybody. I hope you're continuing your work. Keep on growing the garden, keep on growing your life, but most importantly, keep on growing your regenerative business and bringing that good to the world. All right. Bye for now.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. It really is a blessing and a pleasure to bring each episode to you. So what'd you think? If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review or follow us on the podcast platform of your choice. Each review really does help us to further the reach of this podcast and move our mission forward to build regenerative economies in every bioregion. If you have a suggestion or feedback for us, please let us know in the open and free Regenerative Business Economies Network, known as RegenBen, which is linked in the description and in the show notes of this episode. RegenBen also has an awesome community request form that allows you to suggest guests, register to be a guest on the podcast, and share your own regenerative entrepreneur startup story, or any other suggestion you may have for the community. Without your feedback and requests, this podcast and community wouldn't be what it is, so please let us know. Now, this may be bye for now, but remember, it doesn't end here. It has only just begun. The regenerative economies of the future start now with you.